Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Timeout with Tackle What's Next. I'm Danielle Berman, and I am the founder and CEO of Tackle What's Next, where we help athletes create impact outside of the game and find their purpose in life after sports. Here at Timeout with Tackle What's Next, we talk to athletes and executives about how sport has changed their lives and made a difference in their lives and what lessons that they've learned in life outside of the game. And tonight we are talking to Kelsey Ruffing. Kelsey's athletic career started at a young age. I'm really excited to dive into that story. She was a striker on the soccer field, and she played through a bunch of injuries. She was recovering from 2 ACL surgeries, was ready to come back from a third when she realized she was just really unprepared mentally to step back on the field. And then she created Kelsey Ruffing Counseling, and it was created because she saw this need for counseling services specifically tailored towards helping people deal with chronic health conditions and athletes dealing with sports injuries. And Kelsey now obviously knows firsthand how injury and recovery can affect athletes mentally, and she's dedicated her practice to helping athletes overcome their issues on the mental side and really just be able to tackle their next chapter. So I'm so excited to have her here. I see she's in the live. We're going to get her right on the screen. I'm really excited to chat with her. Hello, how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. This is actually the first time I've done a live Instagram feed.
Oh my goodness. Well, welcome.
It worked.
Very exciting stuff over here. It's as high tech as I can handle, so that means it's pretty low tech. So fingers crossed, all will run very smoothly here. But thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and how your counseling business has been going.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. It's been quite a ride. It's been 2 years since I opened the practice, and it's grown quite a lot in the past year, I'd say. So, over the past year, I've been working on expanding the business a bit and adding more services and expanding by including another clinician who works with sport and athletes. And we've been doing telehealth pretty much since the pandemic started. I do have one person that is in person, but for the most part, we're telehealth, and it's working out really nicely.
Good. I was going to ask you too, obviously the last year and a half, I'm sure you've had a big increase in, maybe just people wanting to talk about, their mental health and things they're going through. But how did you navigate being, 2 years in? This happens towards the beginning. Like, how did you build this together? Like, what skill sets were you kind of leaning on as this all went down?
Yeah, kind of with everything. I've just kind of learned to adjust as we go. I mean, I was offering telehealth services before the pandemic, and of course it was like, 2 people out of your whole caseload would be like, yeah, I'm going to do telehealth. But then the pandemic started, and it just, everyone, right? 100% telehealth. So it was something I already offered, but wasn't really utilizing. And then when it became necessary, you just kind of adapt.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's amazing to see, it's kind of funny, like whatever happened to the phone call, it's gone now, right? It's all Zoom and Hangouts and all that kind of stuff. So it's good that you're benefiting from that change, right? And that people are taking this seriously and they're prioritizing it as well. Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you too, kind of tell us about the creation of it. I mentioned in your intro here, you had a few injuries that you navigated. Kind of tell us about that journey. How did you start in sports? Walk us through that kind of experience and what prompted you to create this business.
Yeah, so I mean, I started playing sports when I was like 6, and I was playing soccer, softball, eventually basketball, and kind of did all those for a long time until high school. I had to really choose between soccer and softball there in the same season. So, I mean, soccer always had my heart. I always looked up to Mia Hamm. She was like, the Michael Jordan of women's soccer. So,
Yeah.
and at that time, I mean, that was prime time. I think I was like 11 or something when they went to the World Cup, and Brandy Chastain ripped her shirt off, and it was this huge thing. So
Yes.
so I just stuck with soccer, and then kind of from the start of my high school career, I had injury after injury after injury, and really only had one season that was like really amazing season, and then I tore my ACL that third time after the the best season of my life. And that's when it all went downhill. So I was originally a communications major and liked sport journalism, but on an internship, I met a sports psychologist, and he kind of directed me on a path, and I just went with it. So I changed my schooling and just went with psychology and a sports studies minor, and then went from there. But basically, my whole career is based off of the injuries and the difficulty I had with them, and then wanting to help other athletes who were really struggling.
Yeah, no, I think it's really admirable that you kind of took that, channeled that into something that now can help other people. And I'm sure there is that level of frustration, right, that you have to kind of navigate through, and that kind of identity crisis. So I wanted to kind of hear a little bit about, what did sports do for you, and when you were trying to create this counseling business, were there lessons that sport taught you that you've now used as you're building this out?
Yeah, so I mean, sport did so much for me. I think there's so many positives. That's where your relationships were really built. All my friendships were from sport, basically. And then just being able to, I think it helped with time management, it helped with organization, it helped with perseverance and, grit, determination, all of those things. And then especially with the injuries, it's even more so driving home those characteristics of persevering and overcoming and staying determined. And then really what I learned was I took all of those things that I learned from sport and really applied them to my career, and it's been great. It's worked out and things have been successful. Of course, there's bumps in the road with that, but
Sure.
what you learn is that you overcome, that adversity as well because you've already done it before.
Yeah, no, I think one of the best lessons I think you learn as an athlete is that lesson of losing and failure, because if you've never failed before, it can seem so daunting and scary, and like, how do you come back from that? But when you get in that habit of like, okay, this didn't work, we got to go at it a different way, or we got to kind of regroup, that's a really valuable life lesson. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of dealing with a lot of unexpected stuff over the past couple of years. And I feel like, again, it's that like resiliency that you mentioned, the adaptability. So that's great. And tell us, how did you navigate actually creating a business? Like, did you know that was something you wanted to do? Like, how did you figure out like where to go? Like, did you have people helping you kind of create this business side of things?
Yeah. Well, I think along the way, from the get-go, I kind of just always reached out to people that were doing what I wanted to do in order to get advice or to be directed on a path. And that's always what I suggest to people who have an interest in something is reach out. I mean, bug the heck out of people. That's all I did. It was just, be in everyone's inbox all the time. But I think I just really had in mind that I wanted to do my own thing and work with athletes, and then chronic pain and chronic illness. And I was not really given that opportunity a whole lot in other practices when I was working for somebody else, because you're basically given the clients that they give you. And and I really just wanted to be focused. So I just thought, I've been doing this for at that time was 5 years. So I can do this on my own. I felt confident in my abilities, and just decided hey, how do I start my own business? And really it wasn't that difficult. No, there wasn't that much that actually goes into starting your own practice, believe it or not. And it was actually fairly easy once you get the information on how to do that. So I think it started probably with the confidence to do it, and then just another part of being an athlete, I think, is when you have a goal in mind, you're not going to stop to do it. You're going to get it done. And that's kind of how it's been. You just get it done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the easiest part of a business is like starting it, right? Like, it's that confidence piece that you mentioned. Like, once you get there, like that's the quick part, is like setting up whether it's the LLC or whatever it is, right? You're like, okay, did that, checked off the list. Like you said, you have that goal list. And then it's really growing the business and building the business and doing that work. So, tell me, is there anything that you did or you wish you did that would have prepared you for, your career outside of athletics? Is there something that you remember that, you thought was really helpful and benefited you now, or maybe something that now looking back, you're going, oh man, I wish I would have done more of this?
Mm. I think it was really just about what am I passionate about? And at the time, I was passionate about communications, but not nearly as much as being passionate about helping athletes, because I just felt so much empathy for them. So when I learned that there was this thing called sports psychology and you could do that, it was like, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing. So I think just that's the struggle is, what do I do next? Now that I'm not playing, what am I going to do? And I think that's important to start building before you kind of exit from sport is, what are other pieces of my identity that I have interest in? But it's also interesting because a lot of times athletes stay within athletics, right? Whether that's like an athletic trainer or physical therapy or, whatever that is, which we do that kind of for a reason, right? It still keeps you in the zone there and connected. And if that's where you feel good, then that's where you feel good. But I would say, taking opportunities, all the opportunities, because you never know what's going to come out of it. And most of the time, it's the connections, like all the connections I've made have got me here.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great piece of advice. And I would agree with that. Like, my network is really why I'm where I am today. And I would say a lot of people would say the same. And I think that's one of the really great opportunities you have as an athlete is the people around you want to help you and that you can use that network to really to leverage and figure out what you like to do and open those doors. So I love that. And I love that just like seizing the opportunity. It's a great kind of mantra of like, it doesn't have to be a full-time job, doesn't have to be an internship, but like if there's an opportunity to grab coffee with someone, take it. If there's an opportunity to do like a lunch and learn, go do it, right? Like take those opportunities. I love that. I wanted to talk too about, you're working with athletes right now that may be struggling with whether it's mental health, identity, maybe it's something a little bit more serious as well. Are there specific ways, I kind of want to focus on the identity side of things, so if someone comes to you and they are struggling around, I really don't know what I want to do next, or I don't know who I am outside of my sport, what kind of advice, we're talking general here, would you be giving, in terms of some tips that people can really start to think about, maybe it's someone that's, still playing, but trying to figure out what that next thing is, or maybe they've just recently moved on, what kind of feedback do you give folks that are saying, I don't really know who I am outside of my sport?
Yeah. Well, what we know is that identity is really closely tied to connections, and it's closely tied to your own community that you present with, right? And that's why athletes, identify as athletes, and they don't really think in those broader terms. But that's why it's good to build a network outside of sport. And so, how do you do that? You can go try new things. You can, go to networking events. You can try to just get outside of that like one community that you're a part of and see how it feels. Try new things is what I always tell people, because again, those opportunities are going to bring you to a place where maybe another passion lies. Once you're on that one-way track of athletics, that's what you do. You designate all your time and energy to that. So, now when you're exiting sport, it's like, oh, where do I put that time and energy? And you almost panic. But I mean, there's time. There's always time to figure things out.
Yeah, I think it's emphasizing that it's not going to be quick, right? It's not going to be something that you attend an event and you're like, this is it. I found my next thing, right? It might take a couple years to figure out what that next thing is. And that's why starting earlier is always, better, because you have the time to explore and try things out. But I think that's a really important piece, that it's going to take time, and there's no like perfect solution or like, you should be doing this. It's going to be all individualized to what you love and what you're interested in. But that's a really good piece. I think the timing, everyone kind of expects like, oh, I should just do something and be like, found it, this is my next thing. And it's not always that easy. It's, it takes time to develop some of those things for sure.
Well, and everybody has a story, everybody has a story. And I think when we really take some of those moments that maybe you struggled the most and try to make those into strengths, that's where people find their passion, when they make something out of it. So whether that's an injured athlete and then overcoming and taking that and making meaning out of it, it could be that you had like an amazing career, never got injured, and now you're like, well, who am I now without this, amazing career? And it's like, well, you can do something with that. You can do something with the fact that you were an amazing athlete and still use it as a platform to propel yourself forward.
Yeah, and I think that's an amazing point too, because it doesn't always have to be something, ground shaking or, like awful to set you on this path, right? It could be something where, you just don't know what the next thing is, or you're just kind of in this space of like confusion. It doesn't always have to be like an injury or something negative. A lot of times, one thing I always say is like every athlete has in common that eventually they're not going to be able to be an athlete anymore. And it doesn't matter how that happens, right? Unfortunately, some cases are more, worse than others. But at the end of the day, you should be thinking about what that is. And like you said, I think the community piece is huge, that connection piece. Like, every athlete has gone through this at one point in time or will. So if you have folks in your network that, even if they played a different sport or in a different situation, I bet they could relate to this. And so I love that, like, connect with people and find people. Maybe they're not in your circle of athletes, but find people outside of sport, and then find those folks within the athlete community that you can talk to and just be like, I see someone that understands what this feels like, right? And I think that's another big piece of it too.
Yes, yeah. And purpose plays a big role in that. We know that purpose plays a huge role in identity, and sport really gives people a lot of purpose. You know your role in sport and you have a purpose in playing. And when you find purpose outside of sport is typically where people will then start to recreate their identities, because purpose part is so big.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge part of it. And I wanted to ask you a couple more questions as we wrap up. One is just like, what is that one thing that you would really want an athlete to know about preparing for the next chapter? If they could take away one thing from this conversation, what would you want that to be?
Oh, that's a big one. That one thing. That they don't have to have it all figured out. There's a lot of pressure, especially when a lot of the athletes I work with are going through transitional periods, whether that's high school to college or college to professional life. And that seems to be when they're really moving on from sport and starting to question these things. And I think in general, our society has a timeline, and that's not a timeline for everybody. And, we don't have to have all this anxiety and burn ourselves out with trying to figure out what the heck we want to do, because it's going to take time, right? And what you're doing at 25 might not be what you figure out you really want to do at 35. So I would say just taking time to get to know yourself. It's not so much like, who do I want to be as far as like a career, but who are you as a person, and trying to follow that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great takeaway, and I think we can start to wrap it up right there. That's like a really good takeaway soundbite that we'll make sure everybody has on them. And then one more question for you. You are doing a lot of great work to support athletes in that, kind of transition with the mental side of things. If an athlete is thinking about, how can I make a difference? Like, how can I make an impact, whether it's with athletes or with people, around me? Do you have any kind of words of wisdom for them on how to kind of take that passion of helping others and making that a reality?
Yeah, what I did was just I scanned through social media and was just kind of typing in words and seeing what popped up. And that's kind of how I found Sidelines USA by connecting with you and, following you guys. And then, and now, Christine, who is, the founder of Sideline USA, has been a really great colleague of mine. So, I would say LinkedIn has also been really great in that. So just going and making those connections, like, don't be afraid to reach out. Every email I've ever written somebody about saying, hey, I'm interested in this. Do you have any advice for me, or can you direct me in a good path, they always have. So, people who are passionate about it want to share, and they want to give you the information and connect with you. So, I've had a lot of people reach out to me via email and asking me how to go about things, and I'm more than willing to direct them and help them. So again, just making those connections.
Yeah, no, that's great. Love Christine and what she's doing with Sideline USA. So shouting her out, and I'm so glad you guys have connected because obviously your work is very synergistic there. But yeah, I feel like you can't be afraid to ask for help because guess what? People want to help you, and if you don't ask, you're definitely not going to get the help. So it's easier said than done, I know, and I'm in the same boat, right? I'm never like, yes, I'll just go ask for help. It's a
Yeah.
transition I'm making, right? But that's a
Right.
really great piece of advice too. And just last question in terms of connecting and getting in touch, how can people connect with you, with your counseling business? I know you said you're trying to grow, so if people are interested in learning more about that, just give us kind of what's coming up for you and how can people connect?
Yeah, so on our website, there is like a careers page on there as well, but you can send a message through the website, which comes to my email, which is kelseyruffingcounseling.com. And then on Facebook, people message me a lot on Facebook and Instagram, so you can just search for Kelsey Ruffing Counseling on Facebook, and then Instagram, Kelsey_Ruffing_counseling. But I am on LinkedIn, so people, want to search on LinkedIn under, Kelsey Roofing, then that would be great. So yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm just not on Twitter.
All good. No, I think they'll hopefully follow you right here, and we'll put some links in our follow-ups here for them to go grab you in other places. And Kelsey, thanks for taking the time to be here with us today. It was
Thank
awesome
you.
to have you.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the advice that you shared, and thanks to everybody that tuned in. I saw Joseph was here. It looked like April, Alexa, a bunch of people popped in. So thank you guys for listening in. And Kelsey, thanks again for all the great work that you're doing.
Yes, thank you. It was awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time for another episode of Time Out with Tackle What's Next. Have a great night. Bye.